And if we keep falling down and hitting that quote unquote rock bottom, it takes so much of our energies to pull ourselves up to maybe our bench line. Benchmark is the word I was looking for. That it's difficult to go much more beyond that. And so when I think of resilience, or especially proactive resilience, it's that piece of like, how can we minimize negative outcomes during a challenge? How can we stay or get back on track when we're experiencing that? How can we grow stronger? So like pulling yourself up is great and everything, but I'd rather not fall all the way down first.
Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Jenn Fredericks. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I am a mom, a daughter, a wife, a cat grandmother, apparently, a chronic illness patient, and also a caregiver for my daughter, which led me to the path of becoming a prosilience coach and a personal resilience practitioner.
I can't wait to dive into that. And before we do, you and I had a coaching session together. And let's talk about what your experience was of that.
Yes. Well, and first I just want to highlight for everyone that every coach, I hate to say the words should or need, right? But every coach needs a coach. Almost like I think every human should have a coach. So I was very excited to be able to have that session with you. And it was one that I know I always can find something to explore. I didn't know how much I needed to explore what came up at that moment when we did meet. And it was around being an imperfect mom, or at least putting that label on myself. So with my daughter's illness, she also has some chronic pain. And so there's difficulty with school sometimes. And so it was me being on that roller coaster of one day is going along swimmingly and the next day isn't so easy, and up and down and roller coaster. And even though I really help my clients kind of balance that type of uncertainty and challenge, at times we all need support for ourselves. And so we explored that. And it was really lovely because you helped me name an emotion that I could feel, but I hadn't named. And then went even further to invite me to allow it to speak. And this is something that I think is really important for us to be able to do if we're comfortable with it. And I always have enjoyed that type of exploration and embodiment, and sort of bringing the mind and mindfulness and cognitive type stuff along with the embodiment and sensations of what we feel. And man, did my frustration had some talking to do. It not only had some talking to do, but it had some sobbing to do. And it was a very safe space for me to be able to do that, and for my frustration to speak and materialize. And I was lighter. After that session.
Awesome. Yeah, I do remember very vividly. Just, I mean, I remembered something
Yeah.
right before we hit record, and I was like, oh, you were that one. And I do remember that, because our emotions are something that are unexpressed, even when you're in the work, and
Mhm.
when we help people do what we do, we can still. I agree with you that everybody needs a coach,
Yeah.
and that's yeah. I won't beat that horse to death too much. Um, but coaching is something that changed my life, and for the most part, I think that every coach out there
Mhm.
has had a similar experience, or they wouldn't want to support other people the same way that they were supported. So
Mhm.
um, I'm excited to hear. I think that you said personal resilience or
Yeah.
something along those lines. So
Yeah.
let's talk
So
about personal resilience
sure.
coaching.
Well, I started 7 years ago as a general life coach, working with individuals as well as group facilitation and courses, and then also with some organizations, and loved it. I had a wonderful time. I got into coaching because I had been laid off from my 16-year marketing and event marketing career. And at the same time was going through a large personal disruption after my daughter's diagnosis with a difficult illness. I'm also been managing my chronic illness for 3 decades. I'm a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. And so at this time where everything was kind of coming to a head, I usually have my stuff together. I really do. People would always ask me, how are you so resilient? And I didn't really know, I just did it. And at this point in time in 2016, early 2017, I did not have my stuff together. And I wasn't
Mm,
sure what tools would help me. I was laid off, and I flippantly said, hey, I know this person who's a life coach. Maybe I'll talk to her and then I'll try this life coach thing. I had not had a single coaching session before I started my certification. What I know to be true now is that I got into that certification program not for my career, but for me, to keep me
mm,
upright, to help me heal, to help me gain tools and coping skills, to be able to support myself and my daughter and my family through this really difficult time we were experiencing. And the rest is history. It changed my life, and I know it can change lots of people's lives if they're open to it. It gives you a different perspective. It helps you find your focus and your inner, I call it inner truth, or your core being, so that you're always living authentically to who you are and how you want to be. And so I did that for 7 years, loved it. And then I kept feeling this pull to go out on my own. At that time, I was a contractor with a company. Felt this pull to go out on my own and really focus on where my pain and my purpose meet, because that is, as cliche as it sounds, where my passion is. But it's
mm,
supporting chronic illness patients and their caregivers to truly live the life they're working to heal. And I
mm,
do that through helping them build their proactive resilience or their prosilience, and also
mm.
as a personal resilience practitioner.
I'm seeing a lot of similarities in our backgrounds, that
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's something going on, something you want fixed, and you're like, oh, let's try this life coaching thing,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of fall in love. And what a beautiful story. Just um, resilience is something that I've not like, I want to say that I've struggled with,
Mm-hmm.
but I've definitely I've definitely struggled, and I've definitely not given myself credit for where I have been resilient. So
Sure. Yeah. And some people don't resonate with the word resilience.
mm,
Some people resonate more with maybe grit, or like pushing through or something like that. And I know a lot during COVID that a lot of frontline healthcare workers were asked to be so resilient that they're like, if you ask me to be resilient one more time, I'm going to throw something at you. And I understand that. So it may not work for everyone, but it certainly has worked for me. Whereas thinking of myself as having grit didn't, because to me, grit is like you're white knuckling it through life. Like you're holding on so tightly and just pushing through. And then I'm like, how would you have the energy to continue doing that for so long? That's why I like prosilience, because it's helping us build the sustainability piece of having personal resilience. And it's giving us tools to help prepare ourselves for those challenges that may not be in our lives yet, but we know will come, because, you know, none of us were guaranteed an easy go at this. And we have the personal choice and responsibility to decide how we're going to respond.
Yeah. And to me, resilience is that, like, is the get back up muscle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like the Batman quote.
What's the Batman quote?
The Batman quote is when, like, the butler says, "Oh, and Master Wayne, why do we fall down?" And he says to get back up. And I agree with that. You know, the bounce back, the pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But when I discovered the work by Linda Hoops, who's an industrial and organizational psychologist and researcher, she's been researching resilience for 30 years. She developed the framework for prosilience. And I read the book and I said that, whoa, she has just described what I've been innately doing since I was 15 years old, when I had my first kidney transplant. And she looks at resilience as being able to maintain high levels of effectiveness and well-being while dealing with high levels of challenge and disruption. The reason I like that is because humans, we use our energy to fuel our resilience. And if we keep falling down and hitting that quote unquote rock bottom, it takes so much of our energies to pull ourselves up to maybe our bench line. Benchmark is the word I was looking for. That it's difficult to go much more beyond that. And so when I think of resilience, or especially proactive resilience, it's that piece of like, how can we minimize negative outcomes during a challenge? How can we stay or get back on track when we're experiencing that? How can we grow stronger? So, like, pulling yourself up is great and everything, but I'd rather not fall all the way down first.
Yeah. I was just listening this morning to a training that I went through in 2022 for having a recovery ritual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you have it, you've set an intention for the day of something that you want to get done, and then, you know, there's a wild horse, that a runaway horse that happens, right? Yeah. Where you open your phone and there's a notifications for Facebook or whatever, and then you're sitting in a coffee shop for 8 hours scrolling on Facebook instead of writing the book that you had planned on writing.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, really being aware of like where it is that you're getting off track, and then pausing and figuring, what do I need to do in order to get back on track? Mm-hmm. And so it sounds to me like what you're talking about is like in life, not allowing, you know, 6 months to go by before you're taking back control of the horse.
Right. Yeah. And again, I always, you know, preface all of that by saying, you know, if it serves you. Mm. So if it serves you, or you feel like it serves you for that horse to kind of lead you for a while, you know, that's fine. But when it doesn't anymore, that's when we can choose not to be stuck and kind of step out of the suck and make some different choices. And exactly, you know, what you said with, you know, getting back on track. And resilience has 4 building blocks. And one of them is choosing the strategy with which you want to meet that challenge or the change that's coming your way. And so, you know, you have a couple choices there of how you want to meet it. And then from there, you engage your resilience muscles or characteristics. We have 7 of them. And some of them are stronger, and we have a greater ease of access, you know, getting them to work for us. And then we have the option of, if we want to strengthen a different one, there are exercises we can do that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, I've said throw the baby out with the bathwater in two podcasts back to back, but I think that in certain situations we just decide that we're going to throw our arms up, and sometimes that's fine. Like sometimes
Mhm.
that's what's necessary. Like, but do it intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a culture of quitters never win, or winners never quit and quitters never win.
Mm-hmm.
And when actually successful people are actually master quitters,
Mm-hmm.
they just do it intentionally.
Right.
They do it strategically. And so the more that we can, get involved in programs like yours, where we can identify like what it is and really look inside, like what is our strategies for recovery and what is our strategy for resilience,
Mm-hmm.
and versus just being a leaf blowing in the wind.
Right. Yeah, letting life take us where it will. Because even in challenge and adversity, we may feel like we don't have control or a choice when we actually do.
Mm.
I mean, it may not be the choice to put everything back to what it was before a difficult diagnosis, or a layoff from a job, or the loss of a loved one. But we do have, actually, I would say, the personal responsibility to choose how we are going to respond to that. And it makes for a much more fulfilling life.
Yeah. You said a key word, responsibility, and it's a 4-letter word to some people, but
Definitely.
I love that word because to me, it's an action word.
Mm-hmm.
It's your circumstances or your past, a lot of it might, like, things may have happened to you and that aren't your fault, or that you don't have control over the circumstance.
Right.
But how you respond to the circumstance is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you do control when you practice the control
Mm-hmm.
of your response.
Definitely. And I'm really intrigued by when you brought up the recovery ritual, because it also, I'd love to hear an example of that. It reminds me of one of the 4 building blocks of prosilience, which is managing personal energy, which entails your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, and how you quote unquote fill your bucket. And to me, the word recovery ritual kind of plays into that. Can you share an example of what one might be?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's see if I can remember what I heard this morning.
Oh, that's fine. It's been a long day.
Yeah, let's see. I do there. I know there were 7 things, and I believe they all started with R. And I can definitely share them with you afterwards, or
Sure.
in the show notes too. But I know that first it's recognizing that
Oh my gosh,
you
yes.
are on a runaway horse, and also recognizing that you are the rider, not the horse.
Yeah.
So those are the first 2 that I absolutely remember. And I know that there was something about, doing an action step, doing something, it might not have been the thing that you intended to do, but one of the examples on the call was like, go fold some socks.
Right.
So you give yourself a sense of completing something. And be aware that we can also use folding socks as a avoidance strategy.
Right. Yeah. So it's important, like you mentioned, that intention piece. And I like what you said about that, where it brings me to how disruption can actually lead us to a different action, or I forget which law it is, but an object in motion stays in motion. And so once you can start a behavior, then it can lead to another behavior. Yeah. And then, the recognize piece. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was part of it too, is recognize like that you're the rider, you're on the horse, and ride the horse. Like, it's not, you can't just stop. Because if the horse just stopped, what would happen to you?
You'd fall off the front.
You're gonna go.
Yeah.
So it is, like having, like, lean into it some. You're gonna lean into the skid a little bit, because if you were to just stop, that's not easy, and practically impossible. And I would imagine that one of the R's was to redirect, like, and to take a break, and then, work on getting back on task.
Right.
So I know that in the class, the challenge was to create your own recovery ritual. And I know that for me, it was to recognize that I'm off track, and to shift my energy by, like, going for a walk or going and doing something else, and then coming back and starting fresh. I know for me, something that's really helpful is to have a list of things that I want to accomplish in the time frame that I want to accomplish it. And then I go back to my list regularly and, like, okay, that one's done. Which one feels like the one that I want to do the most next? And then do that one. And sometimes, for me, because I have a lot of big projects to work on, and then I have a lot of little ones, and getting the little ones done first is something that helps clear the clutter so that I can get to the bigger ones.
Yeah, I hear that.
And also taking bigger projects and breaking them down into littler chunks.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I'd love to add something to that too. Like, what I like to do and what I invite clients to do sometimes is, when they make their to-do list, they actually make another column right next to it, and they write to be. And so you get to intentionally plan how you want to be as you're doing that task. I find that helps me when I'm doing, like, scrubbing the shower, because that's my least favorite chore. So how do I want to be while I'm doing that chore? Well, I want to be having some sort of fun. So I put on music, and that makes it a little more palatable.
Yeah. A lot of my chores I've reframed, because to me, time, since it's the only resource that we can't get back, time is really precious to me. And so when I think about emptying the dishwasher, I remind myself it literally takes my kettle longer to boil water than it takes for me to empty and load the dishwasher.
Right.
And so I'll turn on the kettle and I'll empty the dishwasher and load it. And by the time, there's still time for it to boil. It's still like getting up to boiling by the time I'm done. So it's like less than 5 minutes.
Right. And then you have some hot water for a nice tea.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll do that first thing in the morning.
I hear a lot in that with finding the glimmers, the small joys in life, which I really invite people to do, especially when I'm working with caregivers and patients, who are feeling burnt out or on the verge of burning out. And one of the ways that we can start building our spiritual energy back, which is that connection to a sense of meaning and purpose and joy, is to find, like, those little things in the day, even if it's a crap day, the rest of the day. Can we find one glimmer, as coined by Deb Dana, to help start filling our bucket a little more?
I love that. Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms listening?
So if you have time, this is a story that leads into the advice. It's a pretty quick story though. So when my daughter was 7, she was diagnosed with a low-grade brain tumor. And I was pretty comfortable in the hospital setting because of all of my experience there. And we were about 3 days into the week-long stay, and I had been managing everything very well. And all of a sudden, everything started bubbling up inside of me. And I knew that I was safe to let it out if I needed to, but there was like the care team and family, and my daughter was in the room, but things were swirling around me, and I was about ready to let it erupt when all of a sudden, it was just like this calm came over me and everything settled. And I heard from a voice outside of myself asking me, who do you want to be for her? And in that moment, I knew that I didn't want to be the chaos and the swirl and the fear and the sterility of the hospital room. I wanted to be the warmth and the love and the laughter and finding the glimmers. And that has guided my journey over the last 8 years, even with the smaller things like school. Okay, she's having a difficult time with this subject. Who do I want to be for her in this so that it's a better experience for both of us? So I guess that would be an easy question that I would invite people to ask, especially when you're facing a challenge. Who do I want to be for my child? Because that also gives you a priority and a focus for yourself as well, because it doesn't let you get off track of who you are.
And a really important thing that it gives you too is leverage, because change is difficult, especially without leverage. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story as well. Where can our listeners find you?
They can find me on my website. It's not easy to spell, so I'll spell it. It's Prosilience, PROSILIENC coach.com, like proactive resilience mashed together, coach.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Jenn Fredericks, JENN Fredericks. I'm also on LinkedIn. I just said that. I'm also on Instagram at JFredWI, and Facebook at Jenn Fredericks Prosilience Coach.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and pouring into our audience and for everything that you're doing in the world, because we need a lot more resilience, and our kids need to learn resilience, and they're going to learn it from watching us be resilient.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there will be another episode of Imperfect Momming for you all coming next week. And until we meet again, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.